everybody thought Vincent van Gogh was crazy. He kind of was. But he wasn't crazy the way you want to think he was crazy. He was crazy in a different way. Vincent van Gogh was an alcoholic, and Vincent van Gogh was probably an addict of sorts. We don't think he was necessarily a substance abuser other than alcohol, but he could have been addicted to lots of different things. The thinking is that he's probably addicted to sex in some capacity. He tends to write a lot about it in his journals. He tends to get in trouble a lot for his deviance. In certain ways, he's basically just like a pervy drunk. But he was also an amazing painter, and he was more of an amazing painter and more of a thoughtful painter and more of a schooled painter than he was a pervy drunk. So I wanted to say it, get it out of the way, so that we can really focus on who this guy was as a person and how interesting it is that we have his works of art. One thing I do want to point out that is missing from a lot of the representations and reproductions of his work is a small red border that he put on a lot of his canvases. Now, in this work, there is no red border. So if you get real close to that edge, you can see that there's a pretty clean line that was actually made with a digital file reducer. Somebody used Photoshop and clipped the edges off. Now, that said, I'm not sure if specifically this work had this bright red border to it, but a lot of work from this time period did. So, but I point out the painting's edge because I want you to understand that this image has been altered. Where I can, I try and find actual photographic representations of the whole canvas as a thing, so you can actually see that thing, because it's really important that you understand the actual physicality of these objects, because it's a big important aspect to the modernist tradition, which we are studying for the better part of our time together. So, the painting that we have here is the artist's bedroom, the bedroom at Arles, and Arles is the town that Van Gogh was living in at the time of making this. Arles was the town that he was living in at the time of making quite a lot of his works that we know of, these seminal works. He was institutionalized. He was in and out of institutions, partially on his own volition, partially on the recommendation of his family members. It's not like he routinely got drunk and was thrown into the loony bin, as so to speak. He was actually just going there to heal. It was kind of like rehab, basically. And so this is one of his bedrooms in one of these different hospitals that he stayed at throughout the French countryside, and a few in the Netherlands as well. But the ones in the French countryside are the ones that we want to focus on. So Van Gogh is a really interesting guy in that we know quite a lot about him. We know quite a lot about his relationships to his family, and also quite a lot about his relationships to other artists, specifically Paul Gauguin, who is one of the other artists that we're going to be addressing today. Vincent van Gogh and his brother Theo van Gogh, as we would pronounce it, actually if you were a native Dutch speaker, as Van Gogh and his brother were, you would pronounce it Theo. The H is silent. So Theo van Gogh. So, and in a few weeks we're going to deal with another famous Dutch Theo that's also going to be spelled Theo. So basically the story goes that Theo van Gogh, or Theo van Gogh, was an art dealer, and he was an art dealer in Amsterdam, and then he opened up a place in Paris, because that's where the scene was developing. After the Impressionists had their show, a lot of galleries opened up. In fact, quite a little network of galleries opened up in and around the same neighborhood of the École des Beaux-Arts. There were a lot of painters there. There were a lot of, more specifically and more importantly, there were a lot of patrons there. People would go to this neighborhood so that they could, look at works of art, and occasionally, if they were of the right means, they would buy a work of art. So little picture dealers opened up. And one of the picture dealers was Theo van Gogh. One of the other ones was Paul Duran-Royal, who I showed you an image of last week. And next week, when I talk to you about Pablo Picasso and Paul Cézanne, I'm going to introduce you to another dealer named Ambroise Vollard. The reason I'm talking to you about art dealers so much is because they play an incredibly pivotal role in the development of modern art. Without a dealer system in place to move artworks from an artist's studio to consumer's home, and that's who was buying paintings. Museums didn't exist at this point. Museums that we know. So, artist studio to the consumer's home. There needed to be a conduit there. Somebody needed to have these things on view in order to create this idea that people could actually purchase them. And so these picture dealers were instrumental. Theo van Gogh and his brother Vincent had a very well-documented relationship. They wrote a lot of letters. A lot of those letters were very heated, and our lovely author, Will Gompertz, does a really good job of addressing this relationship. So if you haven't gone through the chapter that includes this story, I recommend that you do. So, very, very important. Starry Night. This is Vincent van Gogh's masterpiece. This is one of the masterpieces of all of modernism, basically. As you can see with this image, I hope that you all notice that there is a small black border around the very edge of this image. In from that is a white border. That white border marks the edge of the canvas. Vincent van Gogh was very, very attentive to the edge of the canvas. It was important for him to push all of the information from the image, kind of push it into the center of the frame and kind of mash it down. Because if you mash it down and you kind of squeeze it together, then all of the information is focused and you have this very attentive audience that is pouring into the canvas, that is seeing these spiraling staccato brush marks that's really flowing around this emotional craziness that this person is imbuing into this canvas. Craziness is the wrong word. Freneticism. It's a frenetic work. It's a moving work. It's a gestural work. When people see this kind of work, they immediately want to say, he's so emotive. He has such an impassioned personality. He's so crazy. Here's the thing. That painting was plotted. Everything about it was plotted. Here's a drawing of it. Here's the painting. Those gestural staccato brush marks that I keep talking about, they're outlined right here. All of these different marks that are made in this drawing, this preparatory sketch, which is a very finished preparatory sketch, I will say that, is this. Crazy people don't make drawings. Crazy people is not really the right term. You never really want to use the term crazy. It's rude. It's kind of condescending. Institutionalized people who are at the fringes of society that don't make sense to a lot of normative society. Often there are art programs inside of lots of institutions, and these people are kind of given crayons and allowed to do whatever they want. It's a way of, it's this story that happens. Like, give a crazy person a crayon and you're going to get something that is like this. Not obviously this masterful, but this kind of frenetic, emotive work of art. No, you have these sketches. So that's pretty important. Here's Starry Night over the Rhone. The one thing that I really, really like about this work of art is, and I understand that my face is probably like totally blocking part of this thing. I wonder if I can move this thing down. I can't. Sorry. So this image, looking at the digital reproduction of this painting, you can see that again we have the edge of the canvas cut off by a program like Photoshop or even Paint, something really rudimentary. But the one good thing, the one good piece of information that this photograph has is it actually documents the facture, F-A-C-T-U-R-E, facture. It's the actual physicality of the paint sticking off the canvas. It's this thing that's like poking out at you. Poking. It's the thing that's poking out at you. Yeah, I'm funny. I'm talking to myself. This is, I'm talking to myself. You're sitting listening to me talk to myself. It's a funny thing that we're doing here. But anyway, so those little staccato brush marks yield facture. Staccato equal facture, right? And you can see it. Right here, you have not necessarily, like right up in the top, I don't know if you can see my mouse, right up in the top left-hand corner of the canvas, not blocked by my big head, you can see these little white lines that look like they're really glossy, sitting on top of a lot of these blue brush strokes. That's actually the light reflected. It's called raking light. The light actually rakes across the canvas because you're at an oblique angle, and so there's this glare. It's a deliberate glare. And so what you're seeing, you can see that there's a very direct light source that's shining onto the object of the painting. It's like bright light that's coming down. Bright light that's shining down on this one side. So you can actually see, again, the buildup of the canvas. You can see that he's very deliberate about making sure that there's a lot of paint dangling off the tips of these brush strokes that are encapsulated. That's the thing with this kind of staccato brush marks. You actually have this very physical record of the artist moving their hand. That's important to these guys. All of the post-impressionists are interested in this aspect of staccato and this aspect of paint facture. They're really, really into it. It shows that they are the one who's making it, that they are the sole person behind the moving around of these pigments. It's like writing their signature. And so here you have a really great photographic representation of that very thing. This is actually, as you can see, a lot less finished than the previous sketch for Starry Night. This, I believe, was actually made before the completion of the painting, this painting. This, I think, is negligible. It could actually be Van Gogh copying this painting. Either way, it's the same record. It's still pretty impressive that he's making these two identical things and he's tracing himself. But here we can see a very deliberate exchange of artistic invention. I realize that my big head is probably blocking a lot of the information regarding what these paintings are titled. So let's see what I can do. Live action, everybody. So there you are. There you have it. Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night Over the Rhone from 1888. This sketch, the one thing I love to point out with this sketch is you can see in this painting the light cast, the yellow light that's cast on the opposite side of the Rhone River in Germany is gas lamp. And those gas lamps are casting their yellow light into the water, making these lines that go vertically on the canvas's surface. So these yellow lines that are very, very obvious. Now, directly above them are these this constellation of stars. You can see it's the loose shape of a dipper. And, 1, 2, 3, and the cups around here. Yeah. In this, however, the stars are much brighter and the street lamps are a little bit diminished. It's this really lovely play between these two things. So when you think about Van Gogh, you might think always that he's this crazy man who cut off his own ear. The thing is, he was drunk, he manipulated his body. That's kind of gross, but he wasn't necessarily he was crazy, he was just drunk. It sucks.